Welcome to the World Muslim Community Council's weekly lecture series. Today, it is our great honor to invite Mrs. Virginia Gary Henry Blackmore to give us a lecture on Polishing the Heart, Al-Ghazali's guidance for Muslim children education. So our esteemed speaker, Mrs. Virginia Gary Henry, is the director of the Interfaith Publishing Houses, France Vita, and Quinta Essence in Louisville, Kentucky, USA. She has devoted, all her publishing and intellectual work to spirituality, the world is spiritual in particular. She's the writer and film producer. And as you see, you will hear from her today, her experience and her insight about the work product she has done. And she has been worked for the Book Foundation and co-founded the trustee of the Islamic Text Society of Cambridge in England. She has served as a contributing editor for Parabola magazine for over a decade. And besides having taught filmmaking at Dayton and full-time university and world religions and art history at the Cairo American College, Cambridge University, Central College, and Abbey of Ghazali, she regularly lectures at such noteworthy venues as some great conferences and workshops on world spiritualities. And she is also a founding member of Thomas Merton Center for Foundation, where she organized a number of conferences focused on the work of Thomas Merton and others. And she also worked in Bosnia refugee camp in 1993 and published texts and works on their school system. Her organization, France Vita, plays a key role in the annual interfaith festivals and programs sponsored by the Center for Interfaith Relations and Interfaith Path to Peace Institute. So I didn't finish yet. She has more than impressive CVs there. And as a film maker, she produced many great films like Beads of Faith, Universal Use of the Rosary, etc. And today, we'll we won't hear all those experiences, in fact, Miss Virginia. So I think you, in your CV, there's also, you produce some video and book on Islam, a pictorial essay, Carol, 1,000 Years of Art and Architecture, Ornaments of Lhasa, Islam in Tibet, yeah, which is my topic. My favorite, I used to read a very good book called Muslims in Tibet, or somewhere, yeah. Well-written book. So, and also she has written the classic Understanding Islam and Muslims, the life of the Prophet Muhammad, sallallahu alaihi wasallam, articles of France Vita, Thomas Merton series, etc. So I think it's very impressive experience and such a good encounter with world spiritualities. Today, we will hear her focused lecture and topic on Muslim children education, in particular the guidance from Al-Ghazali, for which she's working a great documentary, which actually we already shared across the platforms. And you can also find on her own website, France Vita's website. So let's welcome Ms. Virginia Gary Henry to give us the lecture.
Good morning and assalamu alaikum, everyone. I'm really honored to be here, and I'm delighted to hear about your interest, my dear, in the Muslims of Tibet. It's wonderful. When I went to Lhasa, I mean, there were so many mosques, I couldn't believe it. Mosques from the different branches of Islam that are in Tibet. And I brought a young Muslim back to Louisville, Kentucky, where I live. And he's been here many years, and I know his family has visited me here, and now he's married and has many children. But I was really struck by the Muslims there. And I did a film too. That was the film you were talking about. I did a book on the Muslims of Tibet, but also it was really important to show them. And you picture Muslims leaving Lhasa and what it must be to make the Hajj from Lhasa. Quite something. So right. I'm delighted to hear of your interest in that. That's wonderful. Well, everybody, I've been asked to talk about a children's education project. Myself, what's brought me to this, today, by the way, is my 79th birthday. And you can look outside and see there's snow everywhere. We had an ice storm, so we can't even leave the house. But so
happy birthday.
Thank you very much. So if I look back at my life, I can see that this was a divine setup by God. Because if you look carefully and you see what comes to you, that's what God is sending to you every day. It's not you go for something that's set to someone else. And so we look at our lives, and now looking back, when I was 22 years old, I just graduated from university. I majored in world religions because I actually wanted to know what happens to you when you die. Well, I was looking at the wrong death. We don't really know what happens exactly to the body. In the next world, we have ideas. But the real death is the death of the lower self, the nafs, and the focus should always be in our lives on identifying with who we really are. And Islam, that beautiful innate essence, is called the fitra, or the primordial purity. It may be called the Buddha nature by Buddhists, the Christ nature, the self by the Hindus, Adama by the Jews. But in every tradition, we know that there is the true self, and then the lower false self. And that egoic self is the problem. It's like our lives are a conversation. Starting when we're little, there's a conversation with ourselves. There's the real self suggesting we do the right thing, and the lower self being too lazy, being stubborn, all the different things we call the vices. And all of those vices are moments at which we are putting ourselves first. Do you think the Prophet Muhammad put himself first, or Jesus, or did he think of the other? So if you're angry, I'm right. If you're lazy, you're not. It's me. I'm being lazy. I'm not participating. If you're greedy, it's for me. It's not for the other. If you argue, I have to be right. So the problem is all these vices that we're told about in every one of the world traditions. These are all originating from the problem that we are identifying with the wrong essence. We're going to get to the Ghazali polishing the heart from what I'm telling you. So the problem is we forget to be who we are. The kingdom of heaven really is in our hearts, right? And that's who we really are. And it's very hard to remember it. And so in each tradition, you have an example. In Islam, we have the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. And the Sunnah is to copy him, because then we don't have to figure it out for ourselves. We know this is what you do. This is how you do it. This is, how you should be generous. All these things, we are copying this incredible model. And when I lived in Egypt, it was so wonderful. I was there for 11 years. I studied at Al-Azhar. If you look at how the traditional people, how they greet each other, how they're generous, how they give their best to the guest. I don't have that experience here in the West, And so there's an outer sunnah, but there's also an inner sunnah. And that's what we're talking about with Ghazali. And that's what we're trying to teach our children, because it's very easy, as Ghazali points out, in prayer to stand, bow. There are postures and there are words we say, but maybe sometimes we're not present to those in the deepest sense. So the Imam al-Ghazali, whom I love very much, shows us the inner meaning and purpose of every detail of the Islamic faith in his incredible work called the Ihya al-Ulumuddin. It's 40 books, starting with the Book of Knowledge to the Book of Death. And these we are finishing translating into great English, into scholarly works. They've been in of course, the works have been in many languages. I have seen one of the original manuscripts in Sarajevo. Just a couple of years ago. I had the blessing of traveling with Abdul Hakim Winter Murad to Bosnia. As my brother here said, I had worked in the refugee camps during the war. It was heartbreaking, but to be able to go back recently, what a beautiful country and a beautiful people who are, of course, loving the Ghazali project. It's going into Bosnian too. But to go back so this great work, I'm going to lead back to this great work. So when I was 22, I happened to read Al-Ghazali's autobiography, and it's called The Munkadh Min ad-Dalal, The Deliverance from Error. What a great title. It was, in the book I read was by a man called Montgomery Watt. It was called The Faith and Practice of Al-Ghazali. So I'm reading his story, where he's the greatest teacher in the world. He's in Baghdad at the great Nizamiya University, and he can beat anyone. He knows everything, any argument he can win. And he's teaching probably humility, because it's an essential key element to being who we really are. And then he notices, oh, I'm full of pride. I'm a hypocrite. I have to give this up. And he couldn't. How could he quit this incredible job where he was like the equivalent of being the president of Harvard or, Oxford? I have wife and daughters. But then one day, because he didn't have the strength to quit, because he had this thought, up and away, if not now, when? I'm on a crumbling bank. And you know what? When I read I'm on a crumbling bank, because there's no time, I've just watched 79 years vanish like that, like a glance. And so I'm on a crumbling bank, but even I was at 22, because you study the world religions, they're all talking about where there is no time. Right now is the moment. We have to actually be who we really are and quit acting from our lower self and act from the heart. And a friend of mine, Mahal Faisal, said, Aisha, in one sense, because time is so fast, we're all already dead because it's so fast. Why then don't we be the saints that we truly are, the inner essences? What are we waiting for? So that was what Ghazali, and of course then Ghazali didn't have the strength to quit. So God took away his voice and he couldn't speak. So he left, he went on the great retreat of many years, traveled to Damascus, where he took a job as a sweeper, as a janitor in a mosque, and he went all over. And then he began writing this incredible work. Well, what he has done is what everyone needs. And it doesn't matter whether you're even a Muslim. These principles he's talking about are essential to every faith tradition on earth. But we need to understand why we're doing something, right? I'm so wanting to jump into things, but I have to build it up. I'm so sorry. So then that was my first introduction to Ghazali. And then my husband and I sailed over in 1968 on a freighter to Tangiers on our way to Cairo. We decided to drive to Egypt and meet the Muslim world. So we had many months in Morocco, utterly beautiful, staying with Bedouins in their tents on the way to Timbuktu. I mean, Algeria, going to southern Algeria. And then by the time we reached Libya, which had a king then, King Idris, Allah yarhamu, I was 9 months pregnant. So my daughter Hajar was born in Libya. And at that time, Egypt was still at war with Israel. So we came into Egypt and we were there for 10 years. And then, of course, I kept reading the Ghazali that was in English. And I'll never forget, Ghazali said, the human being has 3 basic needs. The first, for all of us, is food. The second is clothing, covering our nakedness. And the last is our shelter, to protect us from the elements. He said, in over-addressing these 3 needs, we have forgotten our beginning and our end. Look at what we eat. It's not just simple and nourishing like the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. It's like beyond belief, What now? Let's order this we'll order shrimp mustaches from China to eat, whatever it is. The clothing is a mess, and I suffer from this too. I have way too many clothes, And then the shelter, and to think of people. They live in homes and then they keep redecorating them. So all the energy and the busyness and attention goes to over addressing these three basic needs. Well, I read that when I was in Cairo, and we were very poor in Cairo. You know, we had little scholarships, but we met wonderful people in both Libya and Cairo. In Libya, I met the man who did become the prime minister, of Bosnia, but we met Filipinos. We were tied up with the Filipino Muslim community, and then Nigerians, because Americans think Islam equals Arabs. That's it. So anyway, so then we reached Cairo. We had 10 years there studying. And after that, and working, making films in Saudi Arabia and involved and getting to travel with the children to meet the Muslims in Taipei, Indonesia, just simply wow, you know. And because everyone's copying the same sunnah, you're at home wherever you go because it's the same thing. So then we thought we have to give something back. So the idea of creating the Islamic Text Society in Cambridge in England. So we moved to England, but kept our home in Cairo. And we traveled there with our son, Mustafa, and daughter, Hajj, who really started their education in England and finished it there too, except Hajj went back to Cairo. And we started the Islamic Text Society. And one of the first things we brought out, besides working on tafsir and the life of the Prophet, was the book 40 of the Ihya Ulumuddin, the book on death. And Abdul Hakim Winter, Tim Winter at Cambridge University, who's founded the Cambridge Muslim College and made the most beautiful modern mosque I have ever seen in my life. He did book 40, the book of death. And that was the beginning. We started death, and then we jumped to Unbreaking the Two Desires, these 40 books. Well, here I am. I would like to tell you, inshallah, by the time I'm like 82 or 3, all 40 should be done. They're all in process. We've got the last missing 13 that the Text Society didn't do, and we in Fons Vitae here in Louisville, Kentucky didn't do. We've got them all contracted out. One that's very exciting was just been translated by Abdurrahman Fitzgerald, who lives in Marrakesh, a great scholar. He's done many of the Ghazali books. He did 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7 for us before I turned those into children's books. But it's the book, The Banes of the Tongue, how we bring ourselves down, not just by backbiting, but there's so many subtle things. I'm nearly afraid to read it because I'll see how stupid I am when I'm talking all the time, how I'm pushing myself up, how I'm subtly bragging. You know, it's terrible. So that's going to be a pretty incredible book to bring out. And all right, so bringing this stuff out for children, why? Well, about 11 years ago, I started reading some. We publish, Fons Vitae publishes 85% Islamic spirituality and about 15% other traditions. But then I started picking up some of these Ghazali books that I published. And I started to read them, but they were too hard for me, even English, but they're scholarly, but they're in my language. It wasn't that I couldn't understand it, but it was so deep. And there were everything is supported by passages of Hadith and Quran. And you don't just read them, you have to read it and think about it and go where it's taking you. Sublime stuff. So I would be reading and wow. And then I would shut the book and I was still me. I wasn't being changed. My approach to life was still the same old me. And frankly, I was scared. I thought my whole life I've been publishing Ghazali and all of these spiritual books, and I'm really not getting anywhere. I mean, isn't this sad to say? Then my dear friend Hamza Yusuf, who runs the Zaytuna University in Berkeley, called up and he said, you know, my children go to an Islamic school and it's not working out. And we know what that means. You know, you can be pretty dry with the way Islam is taught to children. And so he said, what about Ghazali for children? And of course, by now I have grandchildren. My own children are in their 50s. So I thought, oh, my grandchildren, they're going to grow up like all these kids just dying to look at videos and iPhones, and they're not going to want to read, and they're going to not want to do their prayers because it's, whatever. So my goodness. So the project began. And some Muslims of Dubai, a wonderful couple in Dubai gave us the first $30,000 to start. But you know what it was to get books 1 through 7 translated into good English, those being edited, which took years, so they're perfect, every reference checked. And then for me to sit on this couch behind me, because my office is in the kitchen, of course, right? And this is my kitchen couch, and I look out at the birds that are eating the bird feed right now in the snow. So I sat there for 7 years, right? 8 years on that couch. I took the Book of Knowledge, the first book, Kitab al-Ilm, which is said to contain the entire rest of the 40, right? And everyone said, oh, don't start with that, it's too hard. But you have to start with the first book, right? And it's like, just as we hear that the Quran is contained in the Fatiha. So I started the Book of Knowledge. And I would read a paragraph, and first I'd read it, and I circled every key idea. And then I didn't put in every supportive hadith or Quranic passage, etc., just the key ideas. And I didn't want to miss one of them. I thought, what if there's somebody in Bangladesh and the only thing they ever read is this? So I can't miss a thing. But in order to re-express it for young people, I had to understand it and think about it. Because normally you read books and you just read through, oh, wow, it's beautiful. That's very spiritual. But at what point do you understand it to the point that your life changes? It's a different lens you're seeing through, right? And so I sat there and started writing these stories, because we all remember best in stories, don't we? Even Ghazali, he does nothing but tell stories. How am I doing on time? I'm good? Okay, good. All right, so I began, because we all remember stories. So I'm just going to tell you a story right now and see what it does to you, all right? In book 5, the book of Zakat, I thought, oh my goodness, Zakat. I mean, I studied it at Azhar, mudda of grain, 2.5%. I thought, oh, this is going to be really hard to make it interesting for young people or my grandchildren. Okay, just listen to this. All right, I took what he said, and I'm going to pretend you all are 5 or 6 years old, all right? You're about to have your life changed, by the way. It changed me. So in the story, the stories are about a group of children who live in a town, I think an Islamic town. And they're walking home from school one day, and they talk about how, they really don't know why their mother is so angry if they miss prayers, or they don't know why they have to do all this stuff, really. And they see a wall, and they go into a garden. It's a forgotten garden, and beautiful flowers hanging down. And they think, we'll come here and talk about our problems together, but who will answer our questions? And then one little boy said, remember that old man who always sits in the park, Hajj Abdullah? He's kind of like a saint, right? He's just sitting there, and the birds are all over him, and the squirrels are eating out of his hand, because animals are not afraid of someone if there's no one there. So he's someone where there's no nafs, there's just the emptiness, the fitra alive. And so they go to him, and even his name, Hajj Abdullah, someone who has made the pilgrimage, Abd Allah, servant of God. And they go to him and say, we have questions. We wonder if you'll come to our garden after school every day or some days and answer them. He said, I will do it, but I will not answer for myself. I will answer from Imam al-Ghazali. So that's how. And so they meet him there. And they also learn in other ways too. They also learn, I've got to turn this off. People are going to wish me happy birthday. They also learn from their grandfather, grandmother, their mother, father, their teacher at school. We don't make it. You only get your knowledge. You only get taught by, somebody you meet in the Central Park there. So that's the theme. So on one day, now we've already gotten to book 5. They are at they go to the park, the children, to the general park, and there's a merry-go-round, and they're on the merry-go-round. And these children noticed their children looking longingly, because they don't have the money to go, this little bit of money. They noticed the children looking longingly, and also they're a little shabby. So they're running to see Hajj Abdullah. And then they pass a beggar saying, Lillah, Lillah. So they run into Hajj Abdullah and they say, oh, blessed teacher, why are some people rich and some people poor? Well, haven't all of you had that question? Don't your children have that question? And Hajj Abdullah says, and there's a man saying, Lillah. Hajj Abdullah said, well, Lillah means for God, for the sake of God, but li also means it already belongs to God. Inna lillahi, surely we belong to God, right? So take this money to him, because you know, if someone reaches out to you, you don't disappoint. And all of you and all of me, you know, reaching out can be someone who's just sad or lonely. We're surrounded by people being reached out to, and it's basically by God, you know, because you think, remember that wonderful story, God said, God asks us, where were you when I was sick in the hospital? Where were you when I was hungry? That's God giving us opportunities to act correctly. Anyway, so the children, and then Hajj Abdullah says, and I'm saying it to all of you, he said, did any of you give yourself your strengths, your skills, your parents, your place in time and space? Did we give ourselves anything? I mean, the fact that I'm a school teacher, did I give myself the ability to teach? No, we didn't give ourselves anything. Therefore, we can't take credit for anything, because it's coming through us. If you are very active and you make a lot of money, it's because you were given perseverance and one focus or that kind of quality by God. So then Ghazali tells two stories. And I notice in reading Rumi or Ibn Ata'Allah or all these, they got so many of the stories from Ghazali, because they all take from each other. When you're publishing the works of the great Islamic spiritual geniuses of the Islamic faith tradition, you start seeing they're all referring to each other, referring to somebody just above them. It's a transmission. So that's what I'm doing today, transmitting to you all a few ideas I've understood that we're passing on to children in order that they can follow the inner sunnah. So anyway, so here it is. So the stories Ghazali tells is, he says, all right, one day there was the king, meaning God, said to this rather rich man, there's poor people in the town, they need food. And you have lands, you know, in other words, you've been given lands. And the man said, look, like I'm a very busy man, you know, these are my lands, my food, my apples and cows and stuff. But anyway, he reluctantly took a tray of food into the town to the family that was hungry, and he held it high, meaning they had to reach up for it, meaning they felt they were made to feel low or needy, you know, or begging. And even they were thinking as they took the food, oh my God, are we now beholden to him? Next time he comes to town, do we have to take care of his horse? Because sometimes that happens. You give to someone and then they are sort of have to do things for you. Anyway, that's the wrong way to give. Next story. This orphan who has been adopted by a wealthy family who taught him finance and money. The king, God, goes to him and says, Ya Abdul Haq, there is a widow in town, and she needs money to educate her children. So he goes, and this is the way to give. He goes and he goes lower. He lowers himself and he looks up into her face. He holds the money, the plate of gold, low, and he looks up and he says to her, oh, blessed lady, I beg you to take this money, which I bring on behalf of the king, in order that I may fulfill some of my loan. Because Imam, I forgot to say, Hajj Abdullah is telling the children, everything we have is on loan to us. Everything is an amana. Everything we are, our qualities, what we have, where we are, our connections, it's all a trust. It's all on loan. So this man said, I beg you to take this. in order for me to return my loan. And you think about it. Say you give money to a widow and she spends it for her children's education. Well, that's wonderful. And soon it's gone. Or you give food to a beggar and it's eaten, right? But the real thing is that you yourself have been aware that you are simply returning this incredible loan, this trust we've been given. Well, once I heard this, my dear friends, I understood what humility was. People are always telling us, be humble, be the empty soul that you really are. You think, if I tell you, be humble, how do you be humble? Well, I tell you, when you hear that story, there's every reason to be humble. I suddenly saw, why did Allah take me to the whole Muslim world? Why did he give me a love of Ghazali from the time I was 22, over a half a century ago? Why did I end up, the first books we were publishing in England, Imam al-Ghazali? Why did finally, I have grandchildren and I'm worried about them. And all of a sudden, coming through my publishing company, Fons Vitae, and through me, not me doing it, by the way, was this project, which actually saved my life. It was really for me, and it's really for adults, it's really for parents, because what we do with the stories is take our group of children through first the book of knowledge. I can say the first 4 chapters in like 3 sentences. I said this to my 5-year-old granddaughter, Layla, who's now 16. All right, this is how long the project has been going. She was sitting in Cairo with her crayons at the table. And I said, Layla, did you know there are 2 kinds of knowledge? 2 kinds of learning? She looks at me. I said, yes, everyday learning, what we're learning every day. But then there's the special knowledge. And she's like, oh, what's that? You know, children love it if it's special. So I said, that's how to polish your heart. What? Oh, you didn't know we have 2 hearts? We have the physical one that pumps the blood, but then we have the real heart. I mean, Layla, I'm talking, or Chai, I'm talking not to your cheeks or nose, or I'm talking to you, and I'm talking to your heart. Hamza Yusuf told me this too. And the heart, by the way, is where the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, the Quran was received on the heart, because that spiritual heart is the interface between this realm and eternity. Isn't that something? That's why in every tradition, the heart is so important. The Buddhists speak of the Heart Sutra. The Christians, you know, the prayer of the heart, right? It's the heart is the heart, even in language, it's the heart of the matter. It's the core, the center. Core is heart in French. So I told her, so yes, yes, the special knowledge is how to polish your heart. And she looked at me and she said, what? And I explained the 2 hearts. And she said, yeah, but polish, how does my heart get dirty? Well, I mean, she's 5 years old. So I said, well, you know, when you don't mind mommy, when you don't share your toys, you know, whatever age we're talking at. And she said, but why would I have to polish that off? Oh, you didn't know there are 2 worlds. This world we're in right now, this spatio-temporal realm of how many short years. And that's very brief, my dear. And in it, Layla, there are going to be many problems and difficulties and trials that will come to you. And these are opportunities to polish the heart, because the other world, the real world, the eternal world, the paradisal realm, which is forever, where there's ultimate contentment and satisfaction. So that's why we do it. And the method, of course, is to make your heart utterly pure and to keep it pure. So you've told the child to start with, your real nature is your golden heart. That's who you are. And there are going to be difficulties, and these are opportunities to polish it, and you don't have to worry about death. So in the first 4 chapters of Ghazali, you've told a child their true nature is what, right? And what do you have to do in life And do you have to worry about death when you lose your grandmother? No. And Layla was drawing with her crayons, and she got up and she went in the living room, and her father, Mustafa, was playing the harpsichord. He's a musician. And she said, "What's that?" And he said, "Oh, I'm playing Bach or Mozart or something." And she said, "Well, who's that?" And he said, "Oh, he was a composer and he died about 250 years ago." And Layla put her hands on her hips and she said, "Dad, he's not dead. He's in the next world." Now, what had happened was that little 5-year-old girl, the fitra is so alive in children that if you tell them what's really going on, they recognize it. And so that's part of the way the Ghazali project is working. I started my 2 little grandchildren here, Medina and Bilal. They moved here with my son, moved here with his German wife. And I started them at 3 and 5 with the Ghazali. They used to lie here next to my computer. The children have to draw their own hearts, and then they put dots for what they need to polish off. And I could listen. This is not for not minding mommy. This is for being noisy and loud all the time. All the things their parents are telling them. Stop yelling, stop jumping on the couch, or whatever it is we tell them. So they know. And even Medina at 3, I mean, she didn't really speak, but she understood it. And so, of course, the project comes with workbooks. So we've now finished from the Book of Knowledge, the Book of Belief, which is all the Aqidah. This is very important because, all right, parents out there, if your child said to you, who and what and where is God? How would you actually answer that? Just try it, right? But Ghazali says it really clearly and simply. And by the time we put it in the Book of Belief for children, Azhar University took that children's book and put it into Arabic because it's more succinct. There are imams in Great Britain that use it in their mosques for adult education because you don't have to read something very complex and long, but Ghazali explains it. And of course, we have the children doing projects. The workbooks that come along with the series have, for each chapter, there's the core teaching backed up by a Quranic or Hadith passage, and then there are all the core ideas and all these activities and things they do. And then they have a workbook that they can fill in and draw in and all the rest of it, which helps them to remember. And then, but the activities we have are fun because I've discovered that if you just say, let's say, the children often don't do things because they really don't know what you're talking about. They haven't experienced it. If you have 2 children and they're arguing and they won't share something and you tell them, share, that they think when you've said that, oh, it must be something bad because the way she's saying it, I mean, we're being told to do it. It's got to be something unpleasant. So it's because they don't know. So what I do, a game, is I have the 2 children playing not sharing, and they play it and laugh and, oh, you can't hold my toy, and oh, you can't have my cookie, or whatever it is. And they're laughing, and then you say, now pretend to share, right? And they say, here, would you like to hold my toy? Would you like a cookie? And they discover, oh, it's coming from a different part. It's coming from the real self. And they find, oh, it felt good. It was easy to do. I didn't lose anything by it. So they're experiencing it. One day, my granddaughter, a guest came, and I said, please go over and greet the guest. So, children, they put out their hand and they look down or to the side or away, and a really weak, limp greeting. I realized she really didn't know how to do it. So I went over and I said, you take the hand, you look the person in the eye, and you greet them, right? She does that now. She discovered it was easy. And we have a children's website, GhazaliChildren.org, where children send in videos from all over the world. We're very big on them making little iPhone videos of doing it the wrong way and then doing it the right. Well, these are hilarious. And I notice when children go to the children's website, they don't go to the library for the flip books. They go for the videos. There were 2 little girls. I think we put this into the general introductory film that you all were sent. They were playing, they're doing flips in the living room, and one of them breaks the vase of the mother. And oh my gosh, we've broken mother's best vase. And then the mother comes, and you hear this voice from behind. She says, "Who broke my vase?" And they point to the little brother sitting on the couch. He broke it. He says, "No, no." And then the next scene is the girls go to the mother and they say, "We lied. We're sorry, and give us some glue. We're going to fix the vase." But, there is one little girl in Silkot or some wonderful place in Pakistan who wears a little dress all with silver on it, and she has her goats and peacocks, and she took her dolls and did a backbiting where two dolls come to another doll's house for lunch, and then they leave and talk badly about the lunch and badly about the doll, and then they realize, oh, we've got to go back and apologize. And the little girl said, my goats and my peacocks would never do something like this. So this has been part of the methodology. So the book of belief is then followed by the book of wudu, the book of purification. You can imagine, for example, there's this wonderful story. Here's the story. There's a scholar in a town, and an old man comes with a cane and to his door and says, "Oh, scholar, what is wudu?" And the scholar says, "Old man, how could you live here in this Muslim town your whole life and not know how to do wudu? Go away, go away." And the old man kept saying, "What is wudu? I want to what is wudu?" And the scholar said, "All right, come here," because he wants to get rid of him. He performed the wudu in the sink and said to the old man, "Now you do it." And the old man got it all wrong, backwards. And the scholar, "Shoo, get out, barra." So he left. And then the scholar says to his assistant, "This is very weird. Would you follow him? See what's going on here." The assistant comes back and says, "Oh, scholar, I'm sorry to tell you that, but that man is the elder, the wise man, the saint of our village." Oh my goodness. So the scholar goes and kneels down in front of him and he says, "What is wudu?" And the old man says, "When we wash our hands, we ask Allah to forgive us for what we have done, and ask, help me to do the right thing. When we rinse our mouths, sorry for what I've been saying, inspire me to say the right. Sorry for may my feet take me to the right place." And so the children all say in the story, "My gosh, if we did that 5 times a day, we would really be polishing our heart. We get the opportunity to think about it and notice what we're doing." And of course, what's happening now, we have a little boy who said to me, I'd gotten my wudu down to about 30 seconds. I could do it so fast. And now all of the children, we have chat groups sometimes on Sunday. I'm talking with people from ages 8 to 80 all over the world. We have conversations of how we're doing with everything. And it's amazing to hear what people say, how they're doing with the stories, how their life is being affected. And that one of them has just said, "I just love the fact that I do my wudu slowly now, and that I think about, and it really helps me 5 times a day to really review how I've been doing with what I've been doing with my 5 senses." So then the book of purification is fascinating, right? And then when you get to the book of prayer, I mean, that is amazing. You feel, oh my gosh, I have never prayed in my life, because Imam al-Ghazali, I mean, it's just amazing what he talks about. There's a story he talks about about a time, I think in the time of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him. We're told to pray in groups. It's better to pray in a group. And it was Friday. It was the Jummah somewhere, someday. And one man who was always there was late and missed praying in unison. And the whole congregation went to his house and they wept and they prayed for him. And he said, "We just pray. We're so sad for you that you missed praying in this group." I mean, these things Ghazali tells you makes you think, oh my goodness, it's really that important, But then he points out that when you're praying and standing before God, you want to have your attention there. So he said, when you say the initial Allahu Akbar, get yourself into 100% presence. He said, of course, in a few seconds, it'll go off. But of course, you're doing the takbir when you're changing positions to bring you back. And he said, the more you try to keep your attention just extend it second by second, because our minds wander. That's the nature of the mind, just always wandering. And he said, then when you're saying what you're saying, he explains the postures, what they really mean. For example, if you say subhanallah, don't just say subhanallah, subhanallah. What does that mean? My God, stand, you're glorifying God. And when you're saying Ihdina Sirata, don't you think, oh, show me the straight way. Be contrite. I mean, if you do your prayers thinking, being, it's a different mode of being while you're praying. Just try to do it. Every so often, if you could remember to do it, and you'll discover that your prayer space becomes like an expanding space of light, So he tells you how to do everything. And then, but I forgot to say, in the Book of Knowledge, he tells you the 10 things you absolutely cannot do. Among them are backbiting. Ahem. Well, I rewrote the chapter on backbiting 22 times, sitting right there. And I didn't know whether to put in about how if you backbite somebody, it's the same as eating their dead flesh. The Quran says that. I thought, well, that's really disgusting and maybe too horrible. And I thought, children can take it, hey. So I put it in. And that day I went out to have dinner with some ladies, and they were talking about other ladies. They were backbiting, and they talked about someone's father. And I had a really funny story about something horrible that father did. And I loved telling it because it was so funny. And I got on the car to drive home. And now I know what backbiting is. And I began to feel sick at my stomach. I ran in the front door and ran and threw up. I was conscious. In other words, it's not a metaphor, it's actual. And we know this by the time we got to the book of fasting. There's a hadith where some ladies come to the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, and they say, we're old and frail and we can't finish the fast today. Let us not, we're too old. He said, oh, would you take this bowl and throw up in it? And to the horrified onlookers, they threw up pieces of blood and flesh. And the Prophet said, it's not a matter, you already broke your fast when you backbit. In other words, he takes us in to fasting, not just from food and water and etc. He takes us into fasting from all the things we do wrong, what we listen to, what we say. Very different way to fast, right? Because that's really helping you realize your true nature. And this whole thing that we're doing with the children is giving them a chance to practice the inner sunnah, the state of being, not just doing all these outer activities. Do 10 of these, do 20 of these in your hasanat. That's what are we talking about, right? So then I think, so the book of, then we of course do the prayer. It's so deep you'll never pray. You'll feel as though you'd never prayed before until you do it this way. It's just, this has saved my life, these books. And then we did the charity, which we've talked a little bit about, the fasting. You can imagine what that is, the inner fast, and then the pilgrimage. I actually did that. I got a grant from a big grant foundation in America called the Templeton Foundation, and I got $750,000 because the publishing of these books, have you seen them? They're big, they're the best paper, the illustrations are fabulous. They're the most beautiful books that Muslim children will ever have, with beautiful end papers from great Quranic manuscripts. They had to be the best. No stupid cartoons of ducks and chickens being silly. This as it's, I have, Hamza Yusuf has pointed out that the Ihya Ulumuddin is like the Quran in a usable order. You start with what is knowledge, and all the hadith and Quranic things fit into that. So each stage, as it builds up, you bring in all the passages from the hadith and Quran that support it. Can you imagine being given something like this? Something that's clear and you can understand it? And what happens is, doing it with children, it changes their lives. It changes the lens through which they see. But I finished the grant, and I'd only gotten through books 5 and 6. And the grant ran out, and it was only for 3 years. It was 3 years in which I never left the house, never got dressed, because it was so hard to do this. I can't even, and I'm a publisher, and I have a publishing company, Fons Vitae, which is in my basement and garage. We're a small charity. People think we're a big company, but we're a academic charity. So in the end, I did the Hajj during last year, about this time when COVID had just taken off, right? So I sat in the dining room and I put all the stuff out on the table, and every day I went and faced it. Oh my goodness. And there's a wonderful couple. His name's Sayed Mubin, and his wife and mother and their children had made the Hajj the year before, and they took pictures of themselves along the way. So I could, I'm just gonna, Janet, I'm on a Zoom call, but if you'd like to come by anytime, I'm here, all right? Thank you. No, yes, just come anytime, okay? Thank you, bye-bye. Sorry to take that, but it just keeps me from having to call back. So I started doing it. Now, my dears, I have made 2 Hajjas in my life and 1 trillion Umrahs. It makes me cry to tell you, did I really do either one, you know, because I didn't know what I was doing, you know. And there's a man in Dubai who was like a scientist, you know, a physicist, who recently did a book for us, because he said, I made a Hajj and everybody's walking around reading little booklets, reading prayers they don't understand, moving from place to place. He said, I just thought there's got to be something more going on here. He's done a book for us where he took all the vocabulary that is in the Hajj, like mikat, you know, which relates to waqt or time, deep things. And he studied Hebrew and Aramaic, and he looked at all the other great spiritual traditions. They all have the same root system to see what the inner meanings that are universal, because it's so profound. It's primordial, the Hajj. Anyway, so I bet you didn't know this. You know, we've all heard the story where one of the companions said to the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you know, oh no, maybe he said, the reason I kiss the black stone is because the Prophet did it. That's the reason he gives. And Ghazali says, oh no, let's get down to what's really going on. All right. All of you who know Islam know that in the Quran, at some point, God says to Adam, am I not your Lord? And Adam says, yes. And God says, I say this, lest on the day of reckoning, when we're all resurrected together, you say, oh, you didn't know that. You plead ignorance of that. Well, remember, Adam has in his loins every human that will ever come to be at that moment. So all of you, every one of us, we were present at that moment. And that contract, am I not your Lord? Yes, right? That contract we made, that is inside of the black stone. And so when you begin the tawaf, you are acknowledging, you are re-acknowledging that contract you have made. Now, by the end of the Hajj, not the Umrah, you are standing on the plain of Arafat, asking forgiveness all day long in the company of others in their grave clothes as well. And it is a preview of the last moment when everyone stands together, right? But you get to do it. It's an incredible right that Muslims get to do, that they get to actually physically, it's like children learning to shake hands or do the right thing, physically end up in your shroud begging God's forgiveness among souls, and you don't know whether they're kings or beggars or, you know, everybody is equal. All they bring to that moment is the good deeds they have done, you know, and the state of being of their hearts, right? And I think that's what worries me most, is that I've gotten so old. I mean, I don't feel old, because I should read it to you. There's a wonderful hadith that points out that, I mean, if all of you just shut your eyes, imagine you were never told how old you were or your birth date, and you didn't have a mirror to look into, right? there's a way you feel, there's a body, which is called the body of the resurrection, which quits aging in appearance in your between 30 or 33. You go on becoming wiser and wiser, and you get older looking. But when you speak, like, I don't experience myself as 79. It sounds really terrible. I just experience myself as me, right? So anyway, this is when everyone will be gathered together in this beautiful form. But so in working on that Hajj book, the children, when Hajj Abdullah is explaining it to the children, the requirements, the children notice the requirements for the Hajj are the same that should be for life. He says, you can take very little with you, a few changes of clothes, you have the food you need, And the children were saying, why? We really should go lightly in our lives too, not accumulate all the stuff, right? You don't want to leave on your pilgrimage unless you have put everything in order, unless you have, asked someone's forgiveness if you've hurt them in some way, put everything. The children were saying, yes, but shouldn't we be doing that every day? In other words, this normal life, we're not even on the physical Hajj, in Saudi Arabia, is also a parallel journey. And you can start to see it from how Ghazali explains every detail of the Umrah or of the pilgrimage. So I want to go back and say one thing. When Ghazali says there are 10 things in the Book of Knowledge you can't do, and he explains why you can't argue, why you can't be angry. This is over, all this stuff, and this is why. But a mother called me, and she said, I was at a ladies' tea party, and my daughter whispered in my ear, Mom, are you backbiting? I said, may I speak to your daughter? So little 8-year-old Lena got on the phone, and she said, Auntie, until Mother read me the chapter on backbiting, I'd never heard of it. I thought, never heard of it, right? And look how bad it is, right? When I was a little girl, Mother used to say, my dear, if you don't have something nice to say to someone, don't say anything at all, right? She'd said that occasionally. We should be saying it all day long to each other. Think of Muslims saying, that person's a kafir, she's going to hell, her clothes are no good. That imam, the other imam, he's bad. We shouldn't say anything. I mean, Ghazali makes you, and I'm about to do the book on the censor of the tongue. That's going to really maybe change my life working on that when I really understand what's going on when I'm talking. But I just want to say, maybe there's some questions now, that this project, although I thought it was for children, and there's schools all over the world. It's gone into like 17 languages now. It's going into Swahili. The Urdu is 2 books are out in Urdu, 2 in Arabic of the series. It's completely done in Indonesian, in Spanish. But 2 wonderful young men from Uzbekistan called, and they said, now in Central Asia, where I've had the honor to go, I've been to all the 5 stands. I loved Kyrgyzstan. I have a yurt out in the backyard. I liked it so much. He said, our young people, remember Russia was in there and wouldn't allow faith, And he said, you can't think that our teenagers today are going to love Islam the way it's taught to them, right? And out of fear-based, not the joy of polishing your heart and having a great presence. I mean, it's not talking about who we really are, the beautiful golden selves that we really are. And that makes us all one, because we're all nobody. We're all nobody. And Allah is running through us what we're supposed to do, giving us the energy. What I was trying to get at with my whole story is, it was the setup. The reason I ended up having the Ghazali Children's Project coming through me was because I had already been sent by my destiny to Egypt to see the Muslims all over the world. I have connections everywhere. I've been publishing since 1979. I know all the Ghazali scholars. I know how to raise money and get grants. It's all exhausting, but it's what I was given to do. I was given the energy to do it. I was given the skills. So of course, what happened? This project just got run through me, literally like this. So I just want to say, I didn't do it. It was just needed at this time. And the Uzbeki people said, we have the Ministry of Religious Education helping us, ready to get it in Russian, Kazakh, Uzbek, and Kyrgyz languages. Can you believe this? It came at just the moment everybody needed it, because everybody's like exhausted from the world, right? And all the stuff. And COVID has really been very instructive for us all, So it's gone into all these languages, and there are many schools. There's schools in England like the Hub Club School, and groups. There are groups that get together. There's 450 families in America from New Jersey to Tennessee. They get together on Sunday, and some imam recites something, and then all the kids do art, and they're told what art supplies to have in advance, and and they do it 1 hour, 2 hours every Sunday. It's all over the place. And I'm happy if any school group or any group wants to do it. There is the Cambridge Mosque in Cambridge, England, is setting up a school, and they have 200 families that want to be part of it. And I'm going to be talking at the opening ceremony with Zoom with all the families and mothers and fathers. And I don't know who you are out there, but if any of you want to do the project with your children, by the way, it will be for you. You think this stuff is for kids, it's for parents, and parents have to be role models. You can't expect your children to read these stories, and if you are not role modeling it, there's no point in reading them about backbiting and then have them listen to you do it all day. And I found the best thing that I do with my grandchildren is it's not just you teach them this or read them this. You take the ideas and all day long you point it out. You're going to the grocery, something, and you say, you're watching a TV show or a film, and you say, look at that. We watched the cartoon Dumbo, and I put it out. What happened when the little boys were jeering at little Dumbo because of his ears, and how they were teasing him, and now they know they should never tease. So what I'm saying is, it's kind of a life project, and I'm there to help any of you. And may I answer any questions?
Jazakallah khair, Sister Virginia, and for this wonderful presentation. In particular, you illustrate this project and the idea behind this project through your personal experiences. It will be it is very instructive and very beneficial. Myself, I think as a parent, and I also as an educator, I benefit greatly from your talk today. And I'm sure those who are watching and those who are participating in this webinar also benefited a lot. For the sake of time, we just have one general question to you about this project.
I just have to wait. Nejla, could you call me back in about 10 minutes? I'm on a Zoom call. I love you very much. Thank you, my dear. People are calling to wish me happy birthday. Okay. She's calling from Saudi Arabia.
Your manners actually demonstrate, you yourself, when you're doing this product, you're polishing your heart, by behaving and giving good manners to the people who are calling and to all of the people who are watching your presentation today. Subhanallah. So you kind of went through all the Ghazali's the book you are doing. We had but we wish we could have the book or actual product you have did in front of us, and we can learn more about this.
You want me to show you one of the books? I could get them if you want to see them.
It's okay. It's okay. Yeah, I think we saw it on your website. Yeah.
Okay.
So I was wondering, with this as a Muslim families, whether they live in East, live in the West, and whether they live in Muslim, a proper Muslim country, a Muslim majority country, or live as a Muslim minority, like a community in non-Muslim countries. How the way they conduct children education, and the way they use, let's say, they want to use or benefit from your book project to educate the children.
Yes.
I mean, do you envision it is as a like family read book, or it should be put in a school, or it should be put in a Islamic mosque? What's the context of this project for you?
All, everything you said. My son and daughter-in-law do it with the children at home, right? Mm-hmm. But they're also, my daughter-in-law is she got 5 or 6 mothers together, and on Sunday they get together with all the children and they do the lesson, and they have art, and then they have activities, and then they eat and they play games, you know. And then there's certain schools that are set up to do it completely. They're whole Ghazali schools. That's, you know, mosques are doing it now, as like the Cambridge Muslim Mosque is running it as a school probably once a week, or I think they're doing 6 hours a week, something like that. So it's for every occasion. And even if parents want to just buy the children's books, as you see, we're on sale. You can get a box with all the children's and the workbooks, or you can get all the children's and the parents' books as well. You know, the grown-ups, if you want to. Some parents say they read the children's and then they read the adults because they've already got the whole idea. They don't have to struggle so hard. But it's for any occasion, you know.
Amazing. Thank you for this initiative. Just to let you know, also here in the World Muslim Community Council, the organization which are hosting this talk today, they are also actually initiating children education and children literature project for Muslims. You know, I think it is really God sent that brings you to this platform, and I'm sure your knowledge, your experience, and can benefit the project they are doing here too. So I hope you continue to build on this, and more parents and children will benefit from this Polishing Heart initiative.
Thank you very much, brother.
Thank you. So if you have a final word to say for our talk, and please.
Well, my final word is we're all family right now together, you know, and there's no place to go but in, and to be who we really are, and to get our state of being. You know, if you think of the state of being of the Prophet, peace and blessings be upon him, or of Sayyidina Isa, of Jesus, or any of the great teachers and blessed souls, if we just, this will help us imitate the way they are. And what we love about someone, we love a person. We don't like people who brag. We don't like people who are angry. If we don't like that, what is it in us that doesn't like that? That's the real self, because it's so much the lower self that does all these things. It's the whole idea is if we can just be present. And what do people like best if we're talking to them? If we're present for them, just present with a glowing heart. So it's really just a matter of, and that's where we're all one, because if we're all just our golden heart, there's no duality, there's no other. That's where the human brotherhood really is, in this fact that we're all, oh my goodness, it's just all these nice people calling, you know. I have to shut them off.
Yeah, we can see you are very, admired and loved by the people who are close to you, subhanAllah.
Well, tell me about your origin. What is your origin? What country?
Okay, just 1 second. So thank you very much for your listening and for your watching. And we thank Sister Virginia Henry to bring this great presentation on Al-Ghazali's Polishing Heart project for us. I hope all of you benefit from today's show, today's talk, and we hope to see you next time.
Thank you so much.
Many
blessings. Have a wonderful day, everyone. Many blessings.
Recording stopped.
So now, yes, sister, I'll just tell you briefly. I'm from China.
Yeah. Wow, wonderful.
So